Today in the hot seat we have Gabriel Farago, author of Letters from the Attic, The Empress Holds the Key, the upcoming The Disappearance of Anna Popov, and next year, The Hidden Genes of Professor K. Good morning, Gabriel. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Jenny. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. Now, The Empress Holds the Key, that was your first fiction novel, and it's a mighty tome. It really is. Is that your first book?
It is the first book.
It is the first book. And when did you start writing it?
Well, that took me 10 years.
It took 10 years to write?
Yes, it took 10 years to write, but I must explain that at the time I started, I was still practicing law full-time.
Yep.
And it has only been possible for me to become a full-time writer for the last 5 years.
Right.
And it was during that time that I focused on finishing and developing this book and then finally bring it to publication, which happened last December.
Right.
So yes, it took about 10 years.
It took about 10 years. Now, is that the research? I mean, was it the research that took 10 years, or the actual writing, or the ideas?
All of the above.
All of it, yeah.
To write fiction on this scale is totally different from writing the things that I was used to,
Right.
mainly legal texts and research in that regard. So it took a long time to switch into the frame of mind
Yeah.
to be able to write creatively.
Because you have to let go, don't you?
You have to let go.
Yeah.
You have to let your ideas develop,
Yeah.
and you have to be able to put them down on paper.
Yeah.
So it was a big learning curve, as you can understand. The research too has taken a long time, as I like to visit all the places mentioned in my books. I travel to all the places, and for authenticity, the research is very important. It is a big book, as you said.
Yeah.
It has a lot of historic material, but I must say it was a delight to research and to write.
That's good. And it's a delight to read too. So it took 10 years to write. So you were writing while you were still working.
Yes.
How on earth did you have the mental energy? I mean, law is not, it's not an easy thing to do all day. So you come home at night and then write fiction?
Yes. It was recreation. It was something different to do.
Right.
So I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And yes,
So it
it
was
was
fun.
late at night.
Yeah.
It was fun. And quite frankly, I'm glad you mentioned this word fun. Unless you really enjoy this task,
Yeah.
you can't be a serious writer.
No.
It is a very solitary walk of life.
Yep.
It takes a lot of time. And unless you are very focused, disciplined, and you enjoy it, you really cannot do this successfully.
No, that's true. Now, solitary, that's something that I find interesting. Different writers. You write, you lock yourself away when you write?
Well, I've been asked by my readers, where do you write? How does it all happen? Well, allow me to tell you. I literally write in my attic.
The proverbial attic.
The proverbial attic. I am fortunate.
And it's a real one.
Yes, it is a real one. Exposed beams. It's the classic sort of attic that you imagine. That is my writing space.
Yeah.
That's where I retreat, and that's where I write.
And is there a time of day? Do you have a routine? I mean, some writers get up at 5 a.m. and they do 2 hours before breakfast. Do you have
I do have a routine.
Yeah.
I write late at night.
Okay.
When everything is quiet, I go into my attic.
And what do you-
that is when I write.
What do you call late at night?
I would say I'd start at about 10 o'clock at night,
Really?
and I go through to about 3 o'clock in the morning.
So what time do you go to bed?
After that,
And what time do you get up in the morning?
well, I don't need much sleep. I get up usually between 7 and 8.
Wow. I would love to get by on 4 hours a night.
I hasten to add, Jenny, it's not every night.
Not every night.
But it is a routine.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, just to complete the picture, I review what has been written the night before. And during the day, when I do other things, I think about the plot, the characters, the dialogue, and how it was going to
So it all
develop.
swirls around.
And during the day, you formulate your ideas.
Yeah.
At night, I put them down on paper. I then write them. And in the morning, I review.
Right.
And on it goes.
And on it goes.
That's the process.
So you say you put them down on paper, so you make notes and then you type them up?
No, when I said put them down on paper, I use computers
Yeah.
for everything.
So you do your own typing?
Yes, everything. Yeah, I've done my own typing for
Yeah.
many, many years. Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you only write at night, you don't get the urge during the day to rush upstairs and bang out a few more lines?
From time to time I do.
Yeah.
I tell you something funny. I have a notepad available at all times.
Yeah.
And when certain ideas or words or phrases or conversation topics come to mind, I jot them down.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to lose them.
Yeah.
And then I revisit that during the writing at night.
At night.
Yes, that does happen.
Okay. Now, a book this size, different writers will tell you that there's only one way to write a book. And a book this size, it's very complex. There's a lot of characters, a lot of locations, a lot of history, and the whole thing is just knitted together. It's like a tapestry.
Yes.
Do you sit down at the start of a book and map out what characters you're having, what they're going to do, what your plot points are, or is there an organic thing? Do you start at the beginning and let it roll out?
My books and my characters grow organically.
Right.
I have an outline in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I know where I would like to go with my book and my characters, but it's not rigid.
Okay.
In the writing process, my characters come to life for me. They become real.
Yep.
And I imagine what they would do in the situation and in the scenes that I describe.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine the conversations, I imagine their behavior and their conduct, and I tailor my storyline accordingly.
Okay.
It is not mapped out in advance. I think that would be impossible and far too rigid and far too artificial. My characters literally come to life in my mind.
So the people drive the story.
They drive the story. That said,
Yeah.
the story must have a plan.
Yeah.
The plot must have structure. It has that, but it's loosely knitted together. It's not rigid.
Yeah.
It's not therefore artificial.
Mm-hmm.
It has the opportunity to unfold and develop as the characters react and respond to the situation that I'm trying to portray and describe.
So if it deviates from the path you're expecting, that's fine.
It deviates all the time.
Deviates all the time.
I find some of the best twists and turns
Yeah.
and some of the best suspense that has come out of this happens in those occasions.
Okay, so if you kill a character off, and you do that from time to
Yes.
time, is that something that you get to a thing you think, oh, this one really needs to go? This would...
It's difficult for me to answer that. At times it just happens.
Yeah.
Because we'll reach a stage in the story where this would be an understandable and expected possibility.
Yeah.
And a realistic one.
Yeah.
So then I go down this dramatic path.
Right.
I do not plan that in advance.
Okay.
It is a situation that will talk to me and I will respond to it. And then I will explore this. How does this work? Is this real? And how will the other characters respond to it? And how will the plot be influenced by this?
Yeah.
It is, again, an organic thing that unfolds during the writing process.
Yeah.
For a book to be real, this has to happen.
It's got to
in
feel
my view.
real.
Correct.
And it's got to be natural. Yeah. So The Empress took 10 years to write, and you're about to release The Disappearance of Anna Popov.
Yes,
Would you like to share the cover with us and
I
describe
will.
a little bit?
This is all we have at the moment, apart from a fully completed manuscript. The cover design for every book is critically important, and I get very much involved in that. I have a splendid artist who designs the covers for me, but we collaborate on the ideas that should go into it because it is so important.
Yep.
The title, the cover, the blurb on the back are the first things a reader will see when picking up the book in a physical sense, like this one, or alternatively seeing it on the net whilst browsing for something to read. So the cover is very important. The book is ready to go. It is virtually complete. The cover will be ready within a week or so, and The Disappearance of Anna Popov will be released in November.
Looking forward to it. It's a very exciting book about bikies and the occult and the Australian outback. It's a whole mix of things that I wouldn't have thought you could bring together in a story. And Russian countesses, chateaus in France. It's such a, but it works. You make it work. The bikies fascinated me, the outlaw bikie gangs.
Yes.
Where did you get... I mean, you're not a bikie yourself.
No, I'm
not
not a bikie
the outlaw
myself.
sense.
No, I can let you do a little secret. The best characters in a book are usually sourced from real life.
Yeah.
Early in my legal career, I did a lot of criminal work.
Mm-hmm.
As you can imagine, during that sort of period, I came across some extraordinary characters.
Colourful characters?
Colourful, extraordinary, different.
Mm-hmm.
And they stay with you,
yeah.
and you revisit them. Not necessarily as individuals as such, but as conduct and behaviour and subject matter that
mm-hmm.
you revisit and then incorporate in your book.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I have mentioned to you before, I am releasing one book a year. That's the plan.
Mm-hmm.
They are all standalone books. They are linked only with one main character. My main character is Jack Rogan. He's
Jack the Lad.
Jack the Lad. He's a freelance journalist and many other things.
Mm-hmm.
He is the link between the books.
Yeah.
However, whilst each book stands alone, and Jack Rogan's adventures and escapades determine the storyline of the next book and the one that follows, I like to revisit characters that have been introduced in each one of the books
mm-hmm.
and bring them back from time to time, so that readers who have read the first and the second book, for example, will find echoes of those books in the third book and hopefully in those that will follow, and recognize characters, situations that have gone before.
Mm.
However, those who read it for the first time will not miss out because they will see the book for what it is. It stands alone.
Yeah.
However, those who have read the others will find more in the book and want to discover other things which are hidden in the book that they can discover or rediscover when they read it. That's how I link my books together.
Yeah.
Not as sequels, standalone, but linked through the characters.
Right.
And that also is a lot of fun when you write it.
Indeed. It would be too, because you would get to revisit favourite characters
Yes.
that you've let rest for a while.
Correct.
Jana Gonski, are we going to see her again?
Well, how interesting that you should ask that. Allow me to just introduce something else for a moment. I'm very active on social media.
Mm-hmm.
I use that vehicle to promote my books on the internet. And I've been fortunate to connect with many of my readers during this period. And one of the main questions that has come out of the disappearance of Anna Popov, and the first book especially, was when will you bring Jana Gonski back? Now, Jana Gonski is one of the main characters in the first book, and she does not feature in the second book. But the question has been raised, when is she coming back?
Because you didn't kill her off.
No, I haven't killed her off. She has gone into the background, as it were.
Yeah.
However...
Writing the Gonski report?
Perhaps. What has happened in the third book, I've taken that on board,
mm-hmm.
and the storyline allowed me to bring her back.
Okay.
And Jana Gonski, for those who are interested, is definitely coming back in The Hidden Gene of Professor K.
Professor K, right.
Yes.
Due out next year. So Professor K, The Hidden Genes of Professor K,
Yes.
you're writing that at the moment.
Yes.
For release next year. Do you have plans for another book? Do you have an idea for a book after that? So
in fact, as I've mentioned to you before, I make a point of visiting all the places mentioned in the book.
Mm.
For authenticity, for research, and for a bit of fun.
There's a question. Do you decide what places are going into the book and then go and visit them, or do you go and visit places you want to see and then work out a way to write them into your book?
Good question. I have a loose outline of the book in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the places and the storyline is pretty clear.
Right.
I know the places that will be the key places
mm-hmm.
in the book, and I plan to visit those as I write, if I can manage that. The current book is a very good example. Yeah. I have visited all the outback settings of...
the Kimberley and...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the same for the next book.
Mm-hmm.
And I will be travelling very shortly. I will be overseas in Europe for 2 months,
Yep.
visiting the great literary cafes of Europe, or some of them, not all of them.
I feel for you.
I will start in London and I will finish in Istanbul. And Istanbul is one of the main locations for the book that will come after.
After Professor K.
Yes,
Okay.
correct, yes.
Well, so you really have to think in advance if you're going to do this, don't you?
I do, because, as indeed has happened with the Empress Holds the Key, the first 3 chapters of the next book are already incorporated at the back
That's right.
for a teaser.
Yeah.
If I've been successful in entertaining my readers, I hope that they would be interested in reading more about my characters and would like to see whether or not there will be another book.
Yeah.
And those who are interested will find that there is in fact one coming, and it's not that far away. It's perhaps a year or perhaps less, depending on when they read it, and it's coming. The first 3 chapters of the next book are already incorporated. So, in one sense, I'm always one book in advance, one book ahead. And indeed, when The Disappearance of Anna Popov comes out, the first 3 chapters of The Hidden Genes of Professor K are already incorporated in that book, so that the reader knows what's coming.
That must take great discipline. I mean, The Empress was released last year. You're releasing Anna Popov a bit later this year.
Yes.
You're already halfway through Professor K.
Yes.
And yet you're thinking about the book after Professor K, but we're still working on Anna Popov, just finishing that off. So to split your focus across 3 books, that must take great discipline.
It does.
Yeah.
It is an intellectual juggle, but it's an enjoyable one.
Yeah.
I find it extremely stimulating,
Yeah.
fulfilling, and most importantly, a lot of fun.
I suppose you'd need to after all those years in law where you've been challenged and having to split your focus.
It is a new and different career.
Yeah.
You do, however, build on everything that you have learned along the way.
Yeah.
It goes without saying.
Yeah.
Writing is one of those things where you draw upon every experience, every little thing that you've picked up, because it will become relevant, and you can, hopefully,
Make use of it.
write about it in an authentic and convincing manner. So the more you have to draw upon, the more material you will have and the more authentic it will be.
Yeah. And I suppose that's what I'm finding interesting about your writing as a retired lawyer. Yours is different in that you're not writing courtroom books, you're not writing legal sagas, you're writing international intrigue and mystery and events. And yes, The Empress Holds the Key, there was a court case in that, but that wasn't the reason for the book.
No.
As opposed to John Grisham, who writes legal, he focuses mostly on legal thrillers. Your books are just adventure, thrilling, fun.
Yes.
And the law might pop up here and there, but it's not the reason for the books, is it?
They are about life.
Yes, they're about life, not law.
I have a broad range of interests.
Yeah.
For example, I studied Egyptology for 2 years
Right.
as part of the research that has gone into The Empress Holds the Key.
So you did it as research, or you did it because you were interested in Egyptology?
I was interested in Egyptology, and I used that
Right. That helped to...
that experience.
Yeah.
I learned to read the hieroglyphs.
Right.
It gave me an insight into Egyptian culture, which of course has become a very important part of that book.
Yeah.
So I use these intellectual challenges, as it were, as part of the material I can draw on when I actually write the book itself.
Yeah. And I suppose you'd need that stimulation, wouldn't you,
do.
after all those years?
And it's all my interests.
Yeah.
I'm able to channel into it. I'm very interested in music.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in history.
Yeah.
And the way the historic elements are approached, Jenny, are this way. I take a part of history that is relevant to the storyline. I research it and I ask myself, what if it had happened slightly differently?
Yeah.
And I shift the events in a subtle way, but so that the outcome is different.
Yeah.
You therefore never know where fact and fiction meet, where the two, one end and the second part starts. Fact and fiction must fit seamlessly together.
I was actually thinking that exactly yesterday about the Empress. I was thinking you cannot tell, and I can remember reading it the first time around and thinking, oh wow, I didn't know that, and then thinking all of a sudden, hang on, that bit has got to be fiction, and I know that's fact, but the bit between, I couldn't work out where the line had crossed. And I knew I'd been taken out of reality.
That's the intention, yes.
Yeah, that's...
Because the aim is to entertain.
Yes, yeah.
It's the main aim of this book is to entertain. At the same time, however, convey some valuable information and interesting factual information that you will hopefully learn from it.
Yes.
But the fact and fiction merger, I think that's the real art.
Yes.
In bringing the two things together and
smoothly.
Precisely. So it's seamlessly.
Yes.
So that you're never sure where it is. And that's part of the intellectual game.
The challenge for you. Yeah.
The challenge. Correct. That's exactly right.
So why self-publish?
I find the opportunity of being able to self-publish extraordinary. Mm-hmm. A few years ago, this would have been unthinkable.
Right, yes.
Self-publishing is very empowering. Mm. It gives you the opportunity to stay in control of your publishing destiny. Mm. I have gone down the path of traditional publishing. Yeah. I've come very close to signing a deal with a traditional publisher. Yeah. Certain conditions were imposed and certain things eventuated that made that impossible for me to go ahead with. Mm-hmm. Without going into detail, that's really all we need to know for this. At the same time, self-publishing has taken off, and it is an opportunity which is unprecedented. Mm. It is possible today, if you're focused and willing to learn and willing to draw upon people who can step in and help you, because you can't do it alone. No. To actually stay in control and move forward with your books and your publishing. This is something that has never happened before. It's exciting, it's empowering, and it is very enjoyable. However, I must add, it is a lot of work. It is, isn't it? It's you can't just dash it off and spit it out, can you? No, Not if you want to be taken seriously. You can't, Jenny, and you need a team around you. Mm. Allow me to elaborate on that. I don't believe there is a successfully published book on the market that didn't have a successful, experienced editor behind it. Yeah. Every author, and I don't think it matters who it is, how experienced, how skilled, will need to have an editor. Mm. That's number one. Number two, a successfully published, polished book that we pick up and enjoy reading will have had a proofreader. Yeah. Because the editor and the author are too close to the text to be able to successfully proofread it to a level that is a professional book. Next, the book cover. The design of the cover, we have touched upon this earlier, is of critical importance. I will never be a successful designer who will be able to do this like someone who is an expert in it. Yeah. So therefore you need to turn and engage someone who has the expertise, the artistic talent to put together a good book cover. You can obviously feed them your ideas. Absolutely, you can and you must. It's a collaboration between the artist and the author. Yeah. You have to exchange ideas, you have to prepare a brief, you have to be clear what you would like it to look like. Because it's still your book. And it's your responsibility too. It is. Yeah. But of course the designer will then pick up on that. Yeah. And I always insist, I do insist in fact, that the designer read the book. Yeah. Because without that, the design will not make sense. No. And there's been no problem. But once you have that team around you, you can repeat that the next time. You don't have to reinvent this and put this team together every time you publish your book. You have that team, you're comfortable with each other, you know what you want to achieve, and you move forward along those lines. Yeah. But these are the people you need. There is one other very important person you need. The website designer. Your website is the hub of your wheel. Yeah. These days, the internet is your bookstore. Mm. How do people find you? Yeah. They find you through the internet. They Google you, yeah. Social media, we can touch upon this later, critically important. As to how you drive interest and traffic to your website. Because ultimately, Jenny, it all comes down to discoverability. Yeah. People have to find you. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether or not you have a masterpiece on your table in front of you, you've written War and Peace, for example, right? If no one gets to read it, it will languish there and sink into obscurity. You have to get out there, find your market and promote it.
That's right.
Now, the traditional publishers used to do this for you. We are talking now about self-publishing. You are the publisher, so it's up to you to do this. But the good news is it's possible and you can.
That's right. That's right. And would you consider sharing those thoughts at some stage in a book? Would you consider writing a how-to book or a...
As a matter of fact, after The Empress Holds the Key was released, and I'm pleased to say well received by readers, I've been asked, through social media questions especially, how it was done, because it was obvious it was a self-published book. So rather
obvious for the good reasons, not the wrong reasons.
Yes, for the good reasons. And while we speak about good reasons and wrong reasons, and before I answer that other question, the stigma attached to self-publishing or vanity press, as it was called years ago, has certainly disappeared. That stigma is no longer there. Established authors, successfully published authors through the traditional publishers are seriously looking at taking the self-publishing route. For obvious reasons, which we have touched upon: control, return, standing. This is also unprecedented.
Yes.
So
it's a brave new world.
It is a brave new world. But coming back to what I was saying to you earlier, I have been asked how it was done. Rather than answering every one of those little inquiries, which I started to do and then became too many, or blogging about it on my website, which of course would not appeal to everyone because it's very specialized. I've decided to write a short, instructive yet humorous case study, which I call Going It Alone, Why Just Writing Your Book Is Not Enough. That will be the title. It's almost finished, and it will, in a humorous way, but in a very clear and structured way, explain the journey of my first book, self-published book, the trials and tribulations, the many disappointments, the many things that you had to master, but ultimately it was possible, and hopefully that will be of some assistance to fellow authors who are seriously considering taking this option.
Themselves, So as a writer now, you mentioned before about answering the emails, people sending questions and asking you to do social media. And as a writer, that's something, it's nice to touch, make personal contact with people, with your fans and readers. But you have to be careful that you don't end up being a person who just answers inquiries.
Social media is a very powerful tool. It is very addictive. And as you correctly pointed out, one has to be extremely careful how to utilize it. Now, I have a routine about that. I spend no more than about an hour a day on social media. I find that to be very enjoyable and very satisfying because it fits into my day. But I do not rush back to my emails and to my computer or to my iPad or to my iPhone every 5 or 10 minutes to see what's happening. I have a set time during the day when I do this, over a cup of coffee sitting in the garden, for example, and I take care of my social media tasks. And then for the rest of the time, I don't go near it. It's the only way, because it can take over. And at the end, you're not writing anymore. You're just answering social media questions, and you're doing the social media part of your duties and your function as a self-published author. But it's very dangerous. You have to be disciplined. You have to put it into its own category, into its own box, and make sure that it stays there. But I stress again, its power and its reach is awesome. And it can be a lot of fun as well.
So on your downtime, what do? You have a garden?
I exercise a lot.
Yeah.
I have a home gym. Yeah. Exercise is very important because the writing process takes hours and you are sitting in front of the screen.
Yeah.
So I make sure that I get up on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. Again, it comes back to discipline. Yeah. I exercise. I go to my home gym. I do that. Mm-hmm. exercise. I walk a lot.
Yep.
I live in a fortunate place right on the edge of a World Heritage National Park, so I can walk for an hour, I can walk for a day. It is a spectacular part of the world. Very privileged there. And I do a lot of exercise. My garden is a great passion, and I love it dearly, and I use a lot of time there. I spend there. And I also write outdoors in summer.
Okay.
I travel a lot.
Yep.
I'm overseas for at least 2 months a year.
Yeah.
Partly research, partly promoting the book, the existing one, partially preparing the way for the book to come.
Yeah.
And speaking of preparing the way, as you will remember, I prepared a book trailer for the publication of the first book, The Empress Holds the Key, called Letters from the Attic.
That's right.
Now, we have touched upon the attic, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
These are letters that I send through cyberspace to my readers about the journey of the book. There's some biographical material in it, how the book was conceived, how the characters have been developed, the writing process, how it was done, how long it took. And I've put that together in a form of short stories. And that was released a couple of months before the book was released as a free ebook to download. And I'm pleased to say it was well received, and it prepared the way for the publication of the first book.
Yeah.
And it's still available, Letters from the Attic. I still get lots of comments about it. I think people enjoy reading it because they learn the process behind the book. They find out more about the author. It's no longer somebody standing in the shadows. You become a real person, and people can relate to you. They can approach you. They can talk to you through the internet. They can talk to me through social media. They can send me emails. And I take great care in answering.
Yeah.
And that is how my readership becomes real and become real people, not just numbers.
No.
And I find that to be an extremely satisfying aspect of what I do.
And I think that's nice. I think writers too are changing personalities now. In the old days, a writer was somebody who, there was a wall between the writer and the reader. There was a publishing house there.
Yes.
And I can remember as a young person, if I had a book that had a photo of the author in it, that used to thrill me because I could see that really was a real person. I had some idea. I could connect more with that person just by seeing their photo. So I think we're lucky to live in an age now where authors can connect more. You can express your personality. It's not just what you look like. You can actually reach out.
I actually invite my readers into my world.
Yeah.
Up to a point.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I don't mind sharing the writing process. Now, that is something that really interests people.
Yeah.
I've had lots of questions about it.
Yeah.
When do you write? How does it happen? All those questions you actually touched upon earlier, they are extremely relevant because readers and the public is interested.
Yes.
And I think if you can become a real person, that becomes a big point to connecting with your readership and making your books more meaningful, and they come alive because people relate you as a real person to your work. It may be fiction, but it had to come from somewhere.
Exactly.
It came from a person, and as they get to know you through these different processes we touched upon, I think that is a wonderful tool and a very rewarding aspect of my writing because I get feedback from real people who have actually read my book. And as every author will tell you, that is the biggest reward. You want people to read your work. And if you're very lucky, to come back to you, telling you how they found it, how they related to it, and what they thought of it.
Yes.
It's a wonderful
feeling.
It's a wonderful feeling, and in fact, that is a great reward that I cherish.
Yeah. That's great. Well, Gabriel, look, thank you for joining us today. It's been great to hear.
Absolute pleasure, Jenny. I always enjoy talking to you.
Good, likewise. Enjoy your research trip to Europe, the European summer. I would be lying if I said I wasn't jealous.
Right.
So enjoy it very much, and we'll look forward to the release of Anna Popov in November this year, November 2014.
Correct.
And hope to see you back here in the hot seat next year, prior to the release of The Hidden Genes of Professor K.
Jenny, it's been a pleasure talking to you as always. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Gabriel.